You know how there's this debate raging about the costings of Peter Dutton's nuclear energy program. You know how in what Channel 9 labelled with quite a cheek, the great debate on Tuesday night, Peter Dutton and Anthony Albanese in this leaders' debate were haranguing each other about the nuclear costings. Labor says 600 billion. Peter said that's outrageously high, the 600 billion.
Phil, we are committed to nuclear, not because it's politically popular. I haven't committed to nuclear energy for votes. I'm committed to it because it's in the best interest of our country.
That's the figure Labor uses. The coalition says a much more demure 331 billion.
It will bring down costs by 44%. That's the independent analysis.
The incredibly lowball figure, which the coalition uses, derives from their independent experts' report from Frontier Economics, the highly reputable Frontier Economics. And readers of this media outlet, of course, know all this is superfluous anyway. We rubbished the whole thing from the start, claiming that it was just a scam, that nuclear power in Australia was never going to happen. It was never a real plan. It was just a tactic to make Peter look bold, to make him look like he had a policy, and to keep fossil fuels burning for longer. Because business needs certainty, so let's have the uncertainty, letting the coal and gas run for longer than it should. To serve, of course, the coalition's donors and the media apparatchiks of News Corp and Nine and the others. Forget our rudimentary opinion, which we've stuck to from the very start, first time we heard the word nuclear. This was the biggest policy the coalition has had in yonks, but it's now barely mentioned, despite the fact that if it were to be real, it would be a very, very big event for Australia, turning Australia into a nuclear-powered country. Mind you, that's only going to cover an estimated 4% of the grid. But don't worry about that for 331 billion. Well, the man who many consider to be the top new energy analyst in the country, Tim Buckley, actually took some time out of his precious schedule to take this nuclear policy seriously, because nobody else did in the real world, outside politics. So Tim analysed the Frontier Economics report, re-engineered a bit of it, on which the coalition bases its nefarious nuclear costings, the 331 billion. And he worked out what the scam was. So he's come up with a real number of not 331 billion, not 600 billion, 4.3 trillion. That's the cost. And that's at his lower conservative end of estimates. Yes, that's 3,400 million billion. Is it? I don't know. A gazillion. So how did the coalition and its modelers get to this measly, unfunded 331 billion? Because they still haven't said how they're going to pay for it, let alone AUKUS, etc. However, they claim that it's going to be cheaper than renewables, far cheaper than renewables. You don't have to mine anything. Well, as they say, economic modelling can give you any number you want, and it did. And they have. To look plausible, Frontier used the AEMO modelling. AEMO is the Australian Energy Market Operator, a serious outfit which analyses and operates the energy markets in Australia, gas, coal, renewables. Nobody else had bothered to do this except for Tim. And don't forget, neither AEMO nor the CSIRO, two credible scientific bodies, take this seriously either. They've rubbished it. And the coalition's sticking to it, although very quietly these days. Now, as Tim puts it, Frontier made a beginner's error. Tim puts it very, very tactfully. Frontier made a beginner's error by saying, we know energy demand is tied to economic activity. So they picked a smaller economy. This is the big one. This is the scam. In their estimates, if you re-engineer them, you work out that Peter's numbers are based on Australia turning into a smaller economy. The smaller the economy, the less the cost of its nuclear. That's the biggest of the scams. There are many in this modelling. The biggest scam and the smorgasbord of economic modelling is that they assume that Australia will become a dramatically smaller economy over the coming decades. That's even though prevailing wisdom tends to suggest that economies grow over time, except when they're in recession for the odd year or two. They might shrink a tiny bit. Then they grow. They keep growing. But not in Peter's world, they don't. Them good old boys from Frontier have decided to assume that Australia does not embrace electrification, that is decarbonisation, which will make the economy grow, improve the climate emissions and deliver lower energy costs for everybody, business and consumers alike. So, hey presto, an estimated 3.5 trillion of lost GDP out to 2050 has helped Frontier to this $331 billion measly little costing. Tim rather kindly frames this as this gargantuan black hole as a beginner's error, but compared to all the other scams in this report, these are, they are rounding errors when you assume against all odds that the economy is going to get smaller. Among the other shenanigans, there's a few billion here and a few billion there. Don't you worry about that, because they don't value carbon emissions and they fiddle the carbon export price. Another one is in this haggling over the nuclear power plant costs, that they use the Hinkley Point C comparison, but that's irrelevant because they amortise over 50 years, which means that their NPV, their net present value in their estimates, is wrong. Even though all the cash goes out up front, they still amortise over 50 years. So only 13 billion of nuclear plant construction costs are there. Only 10% is amortised in the period out to 2050, and the other 90% is amortised. That's what you call kicking the can down the old road, which means it's no bearing on their NPV because it's amortised after 2050. The longer it takes, the less it costs us, according to coalition economics. How many billions do we then have to spend to keep the plants running, upgrades and so on? None of that niggly little stuff in there. The other thing which the great analysts of the MSM, the corporate media, and they're at it today, ruminating over the great leaders' debate, failed to ask Peter Dutton is, hey, where are you going to get your nuclear tech from, broski? Is it Russia or China? Which enemy will you be deriving your nuclear technology from? Because they are the only two feasible suppliers. They're at the vanguard. They've got the best and cheapest technology. Russia and China. Nobody's asked Peter that question. We'd ask Albo too, of course, but we can't get in because we're not an Instagram influencer. Meanwhile, the coalition, which struggled to build commuter car parks during their tenure, their long, Homeric 9-year tenure of rorts and incompetence, Labor has been better. Not much, but they've done some stuff. Well, the Chinese have just announced the new fleet of fast trains. These trains will be going 450 kilometres per hour. Better than the circular key to Central train, I'll tell you. And they're already at 350 kilometres an hour. So there's some execution risk, you might say, in this nuclear deal. And that's not to mention, of course, the first fleet recently announced by China of autonomous flying taxis. Yes, they've just launched autonomous flying taxis. While here in Australia, they've shut down the Bankstown to Sydenham railway line for a year for repairs. This nuclear thing is possibly the most flagrantly overcooked policy ever announced in this country. You can read the story by Kim Wingeray on the website. We anticipate now with dread passing the coalition's defence policy, which has just been released. No doubt, epic in its Trumpianity. Thanks for your support. Please like, share and comment in the section below.